Today we are going to discuss on positive organizational behavior, that is positive psychological capacities. So positive psychological capacities are one of the cognitive processes. Out of the four, we have already studied perception and attribution, personality and attitudes, and motivational needs and processes. So today we are going to discuss on positive psychological capacities. You all know that these cognitive processes explain why human beings are different. The cognitive processes are the mental processes. So from one side, human beings are similar because they are hardwired same. We all have two hands, two legs, things like that. But we are at the same time we are different because our mental cognitive processes are different from person to person. So in study of organizational behavior, we are adapting this social cognitive framework. So the Albert Bandura has introduced this social cognitive framework, so which says, when it comes to working in organization, the human behavior in the organization depends on few factors. Depends on individual factors such as cognitive processes, and also the environmental factors. So these environmental factors come from external environment, that is information technology and globalization, diversity and ethics, and also it can come from organizational context such as organizational culture, the way the organization is designed, and also the reward systems. So this external environment and individual cognitive processes create very unique behavior of the employees. So this is the model that is proposed by Albert Bandura in his social cognitive theory. So you all understand that even if you hire the best employee to your organization, he may be a best organization in one organization. You may hire to your organization. He may not perform the way he has performed in previous organization, because his performance depends on not only his cognitive processes, that's his capabilities, his motivation, positive psychology and things like that, but also the environmental factors. So typically in this situation is the organizational context, the way it is designed, the culture of the organization, and the reward systems. Also the external environment, which is information technology and globalization, diversity and ethics, all these influence on human behavior, because as you know, information technology is very disruptive. Things are changing and we are living in a globalized situation. They are so destructive, and you realize that if you realize the taxi companies, or transportation area, 3 years back, if you look at Budget Taxi was a very big organization, but they had a call center, and we used to call the call center of Budget Taxis and order a cab. So 3 years back they had few hundred of taxis running for their organization. But look at now, what has happened. Now you can see Uber and PickMe is dominating the market. Now we don't call the call center, now it's an app. So you realize that information technology has revolutionized the traditional business models. The traditional brick and mortar business models has been challenged by click and mortar models. such as electronic commerce, B2B, B2C, and C2C. Now we know that business to customer B2C has been evolved into a new idea called O2O, online to offline. Now that's the one of the application of online to offline. O2O is the pick me or Uber. So because people are online, same time the taxi is also online, because they have a mobile phones, they are having 4G internet connection, 3G internet connection, plus they have a GPS so that the location can be tracked. So online to offline application, so you can order a cab and the cab will come to you, you can consume that service offline. So that's called online to offline. So you can see that the information technology is very disruptive, and it introduced new business model, and it challenged the brick and mortar organization. So this environmental context, really influence your behavior. The globalization. Now think about pick me. Pick me has to compete with global organizations such as Uber. So that really add pressure to today's managers. So this is what we are going to look at in organizational behavior and management and organizational behavior. How this whole social cognitive theory explain the individual behavior. So individual behavior is not his own cognitive processes. So it interaction with the environmental context, that includes external environment such as information technology and globalization, and internal environment within the organization, culture, design, and the reward systems. So this produces a certain behavior which leads to these dynamics, stress and conflicts, power and politics, groups and teams. So all these areas we are studying under organizational behavior. And then you will be probably looking at how to manage and lead high performance organization. Having understood the human behavior and its dynamics, so you are in a better position to design the jobs and set the goals and manage the behavior and lead the team. So that gives a great companies, high performance companies. So if you want to create high performing companies, you need to understand how human beings behave within an organizational context. I mean, you may all argue out, why that's so important. Because you have assets, but those physical assets depreciate. After 3 years, 4 years, you depreciate the whole value. Maybe sometimes 5 years. But if you really look at the human is a capital. So when they work with learning experiences, the human capital goes up. But what's the difference between these two assets? The physical assets, your automobiles, land, building, and all of them depreciate, which you own. So you have an asset which you own, but it's depreciating. But then you have, on the other side, you have a human capital which you don't own, it's appreciating. So that's where the biggest challenge for today's managers. So these employees, every day the Bill Gates says, when you close the doors, your capital walks out. That means your human capital walks out. So if they don't return to office tomorrow or next day, you are not in business. So your totally business depends on human capital. So that's a very vital capital. So that's what we are going to learn, these management, organizational behavior, all these areas, because how to manage this human capital to get the best out of them and reward them and make a very happy workplace. So in order to understand, you need to understand each and every area of these sections. So we'll be studying many areas during the course. So today I am going to discuss the very important area, the positive psychological capacities. But if you really go back to old organizational behavior textbooks before 1990s, you don't have a section called a positive psychological capacities, because social psychologists had the understanding that the why human beings are different is that is because of the cognitive processes that they understood was perception, personality, motivation, and learning. But then, after research of serious various social psychologists, including Martin Seligman, Professor Martin Seligman, so he came up with this idea, positive psychological capacities. He said the learning cannot explain many things. Now you may understand, you will try to, if you try to explain by learning everything, our traditional ways of learning sometimes will not be able to produce real results. But you may have seen in day to day life, there are people even in the world, school dropouts. They probably couldn't fit it into the traditional learning, but they had something, and but they had something that is a positive psychology, which make them great. So there is something beyond learning that's called positive psychological capacities. So today we are going to discuss on these positive psychological capacities, and there are a couple of textbooks, few things we will be uploading into the course module. So now let's look at the positive psychological capacities. So during this lecture today we are going to frame the session in terms of positive psychology movements, and going to discuss the theory, research, and application of optimism. Provides within the discussion of optimism the follow-up related to the positive psychology concepts such as hope, happiness, subjective well-being. But if you really look at positive psychology traits, are optimism, hope, confidence, and resilience. I'm going to present the theory, research, and application of emotional intelligence. Also going to explain the specific role that emotions and intelligence play in emotional intelligence. Also going to present the theory, research, and application of self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is confidence, and also going to give particular attention to the processes and sources of self-efficacy. How do you get self-efficacy? How you are getting confidence? So we are going to discuss in today's session. So before I start my session on positive psychology, let me just take a quote from Art of Possibility book written by Sanda and Sanda in 2002. So in this Art of Possibility book, there's a, there's one of the marketing scouts in a British shoe factory went to a region of Africa to study the prospects of expanding their business for shoes. And two of them went to this African country, and one sends a telegram. Those days, they are sending telegrams. One sent a telegram saying that situation is hopeless, no one wears shoes. Other marketing scout, he wrote very victoriously. He said, glorious business opportunity, they have no shoes. So now you can see that the both marketing people has seen the same context, and one sees as a disaster, but the other one sees as a glorious opportunities. How does this happen? One sees a disaster another one sees a glorious opportunity. So this is where I want to begin my session based on this small quote taken it from the Art of Possibility. So this is the way humans behave. The level of positivity tells you this thing. Just look at a country where they are not wearing shoes. One sees as a disaster, other one sees as a glorious opportunity to sell shoes. So positive psychology is concerned with optimal human functioning instead of pathological human functioning. There are three levels of positive psychology: value subjective experience, past could be satisfaction, future is always a hope and optimism, present is a flow and happiness. Now, the people who are having positive individual traits such as love, courage, interpersonal skills, and high talents, they always could do better with that positive individual traits. So it's the same for the institutions, not only for the individuals. So it moves individuals towards a better citizenship with more responsibility, more tolerance, and with more work and good work ethics. These very positive goals have obviously implication not only for therapy, education, even your family life and society at large, but importantly also for the organizational life and behavior. So this positivity helps you in your family life as well as organizational life. Now let me just show you a small video from Professor Martin Seligman, one of the person who did so much of research on this positive psychology and introduced these concepts. So let's watch this small clip.
It's interesting to compare the popularity of positive psychology in different cultures, and it's rather surprising to me. So I would say that Australia is the nation in which positive psychology has caught on the most. It's catching on in education. I'd say Great Britain is second, and the United States, I'd say, is about third. Although we're seeing interest in positive psychology from every continent and every major country. Books on positive psychology have been translated into more than 20 languages.
Also, I am going to show you another small video clip from Professor Luthans, who is the author of the book for positive psychology, which we recommend for the students, and it's uploaded into the course Moodle. So he went to Indonesia to do a workshop, and there was a TV interview before the workshop. So I'm going to just play a small video clip on his interview to get an idea about positive psychology.
Back with us on Indonesia This Morning. Have you ever wondered how you can boost productivity and win over the hearts of your colleagues at work? I bet you have. An organizational behavior specialist, Professor Fred Luthens from the United States, is here in Jakarta for a seminar to talk about people management. And we're just lucky enough to have him here with us in our studio. Good morning, Professor.
Good morning.
So what is actually, we want to know about how to boost productivity, organizational behavior in our organization. What is the main key into boosting this productivity? What do we need to have?
Well, I'll tell you, we're here to find out and discuss this with this part of the world. Because what we're finding is that there is so much negativity, you know, just again as we were chatting before the commercial, that the point is that our news is so negative. Our world seems to be in a swirl of negativity. And what we're finding is that that carries over into our workplaces as well. So what we're trying to do is bring a science of positivity to the workplace.
Okay.
And we're convinced that this will increase productivity.
So where does that start, that positivity? Where does it have to sprung out from?
Yeah, it springs out, of course. In fact, we have a science that indicates that about half of our positivity and happiness comes from within our genes.
Genes?
It starts there,
Okay.
but doesn't end there. So our genes will even determine who will be positive and who will not. But when we put this all together, including our personality development as young children, we are about 50% or half are what we're called the set point for our happiness, productivity, and positivity. So what we're saying is that there's also circumstances that indicate, and that's way overvalued. The circumstances in terms of our income level, the circumstances in terms of where we live in the world, our circumstances in terms of how we look, that doesn't matter much in terms of our in terms of our positivity. But what we have then is about 40%, according to the studies that are all put together into this kind of think of a circle, 40% is up into our intentions.
Okay.
And these intentions are up to us.
So it's
we
more
can do
from
something.
us, isn't it?
It's from with us, within.
Okay.
And it's what we can make out of things that either look at the glass as half full or half empty.
Okay, so now in your book, Psychological Capital, you concluded that workers' productivity is not only depends on intellectual and social resources, but also their psychology.
So psychological resources. And that's why I'm here for this seminar that I'm giving tomorrow morning at the Four Seasons Hotel, sponsored by Mark Plus, the very well-known marketing research firm. And I've come to this opportunity to teach about what I call psychological capital. And psychological capital is, we all know about economic capital. Some of us have recognized human capital, workers' experience and so forth. For example, Bill Gates says that the value of his company walks out the door every night. And he recognizes that it's the human capital, their experience, their innovation, their creativity, their motivation, their leadership. That's what makes companies great. And what we're doing is taking that message then to the test of, does this really work in terms of one's positivity correlated to their performance? And the answer is yes.
Okay. So one question is, how do you boost positivity when, say, a manager, how can a manager encourage their staff to work better when morale is low?
Yeah, and of course what we're trying to say is that we need to increase morale. And the beauty of psychological capital is, not only is it based on theory and research, but it also has valid measurement. We can measure how one's psychological resources are. And then thirdly, it can be developed, and fourthly, it has an impact on performance. And the psychological resources that meet that are called the HERO acronym. And the HERO stands for H, the hope, the E, which is efficacy or confidence, the R, which is resiliency, and the O, which is optimism. Those four psychological resources contribute then to one's psychological capital that we know relates to performance. We have that in the scientific journals. And secondly, we can develop it. And that's what I'm here to talk about in this seminar, and how we're going to do that, what some opportunities are to turn to competitive advantage because we all have technology.
So you always say that it comes from us, but there's other people also in our workplace. How do you handle these some people that are more difficult than others
Right.
to handle?
And the answer is that positivity breeds positivity. There's actually a contagion effect. That if I'm positive, you'll be positive. If I'm negative, you'll be negative. That includes their leadership, that includes their supervisor, that includes their coworkers. But what we do know is that positivity from the beginnings, I mean, ancient Greek philosophy, Oriental philosophy, everything has said that positivity is important. Now we're bringing that to the workplace, and we're able to develop it, and we're excited about it, and we're going to talk about it in the seminar tomorrow.
So somebody has to start it, and let it start from us. Is that what you're
Exactly
saying?
right.
Thank you,
Exactly.
Professor Luthens.
Thank you.
Now, Professor Luthens obtained his PhD in Management and Social Psychology from the University of Iowa in 1965 and focused several of his research to better understand and manage human behavior in organizations.
Okay, so you have watched the video of Professor Fred Luthens. And let me just put up this picture of this wonder work of King Kashyapa. This was a fortress built during 477 to 495 AD. So now you only find the ruins, but you may have seen these, the pool area, the water spouts, even the stairways with moonstones. So this is long time ago. The King Kashyapa has built up this fortress with nice paintings, and the paintings last for a longer years. So you might wonder that, the King Kashyapa was an engineer or an architect or whatever it is, If that was produced by Sri Lanka, and which university he has studied, those are the questions that will come into your mind. But in fact, you all know the history that King Kashyapa was really hiding from his brother in this place, Sigiriya, and he built this fortress. And you can see when you enter into Sigiriya, the symmetricity, the gardens, all that, the architectural designs, those are very great. So you will find it very difficult to explain that the technologies that he adapted to make these water spouts to work, and it's still working in the rainy days, And how did he taken the water to the top? All these may be questions for you. But I can tell you that there is something called positive psychology. If a man is positive, he will get it done. He will mobilize his motivation, he will mobilize his perception, personality, all these other cognitive processes to get the things done. So that's the beauty of positive psychology. So if you are positive, you will get it done. So this explains why some people has done great work. And another person, I can tell you that it's King Kashyapa. It's Parakrama Bahu who built those tanks. So those tanks were built a long time ago, and today our total irrigation system in Sri Lanka, there is a huge benefit from those tanks that they have built by ancient kings. Now what they had was positive psychology. They could have lived very luxurious life, but they have also done great things because their names are still, we are talking about it. And you all knows that every foreigner goes to this Sigiriya rock. I mean, there are a lot of tourists comes to see this wonder work. And just imagine if this was one of the seventh wonders of the world, how much of tourists will attract to Sri Lanka. And every tourist pay about $20 or something like that, so which comes to a fund. So you look at these King Kashyapa's wonder work. Actually, even today we are benefited out of it in terms of tourism and collections. So this is the great things a man can do when they are positive. And you don't have to go back to a long time history. I can tell you about recent past also, about certain positive things. Like when I just go to Victoria, when you are entering into the Victoria Dam, sightseeing place, there's a small demonstration they will do every day. And also I have written this article also from newspapers, and this demonstration. So in this demonstration they show us, the demonstrate explain very clearly. During J.R. Javadana's time, he accelerated the Sirima Bandaranaike's 30 years Mahaveli project. So actually this was designed by Sirima Bandaranaike, the previous prime minister, in 1970 to 77. So she in fact planned out this Mahaveli project for 30 years. But when J.R. Javadana came to power with 5-6 majority in 1977 election, he called upon all these engineers and said, during his 6 years period, he want to get this done. And what are the issues, what are the difficulties, all that he was discussing with those engineers. And one of the engineers said, one of the difficulty was when they built one of these dams. Now today we call it Victoria. The beauty of the Victoria Falls will not be as it is now. So J.R. Javadana took this idea, so visited England to meet the Queen, and he said, Queen, we are going to build a dam for 5 reasons. One is to generate electricity, second one is for the agriculture, the third one is for controlling of floods, and I can't remember the other 2 reasons. But when we build this dam, the beauty of Victoria Falls will not be there as it is. So Queen was not very good. But then the JR said, we can do something. We can name this dam as a Victoria Dam. Then the Queen was very happy, and JR said, we have a problem, we need a donation or a grant. Then the Queen said, I can't approve donations or grants. I have to get the approval from the Parliament. So she refers to the Parliament, and I can't remember that time who was the Prime Minister of British Parliament. And then the opposition said, why are we going to give grants or donations to a country where they are no longer a British colony? They are an independent country. What is the reason? So they need to justify why they want a grant. And then immediately the message came to J.R. Javadana that we have to justify. So J.R. called upon his 2 cabinet ministers, Gamini Dissanayake and Athulam Mudali. And he said, we have to justify for a grant. You two have to study. You two have to go to museum, especially the British Museum, and look at all these books and find out how much of gold, silver and tea they have taken it from Sri Lanka during the British colonial time. So Gamini Disanayake and Atula Mudali had studied this area and prepared a presentation to the parliament. And President J.R. Jayawardena nominated Gamini Disanayake to go and present it to the British Parliament. So Gamini Disanayake is a very highly skillful person of presenting things. So he went and presented this to Parliament, and the Parliament approved the grant. And we built up this Victoria Dam from a grant. I mean, this shows you even the recent past leaders. You may have different opinions on these leaders, Keep it to a side, but they had some positivity. Instead of taking a loan, they have managed to convince and get a grant. I mean, you all agree that, a leader's job is to make citizens happy. To make citizens happy, they have to lead the country. They have to make sure that, instead of getting loans, if they can get grants, we don't have to pay back. So I think there are great examples. Even we can take it from past leaders on positive psychology. So when you're positive, your brain works differently. Now this area of research is very new. As I told you, there are old textbooks of organizational behavior has nothing on positive psychology. It's about 20-25 years experiments by people like Eisen, who find positive, when you're positive, feel good, and their thinking will be more creative, more flexible, more integrative, and open to information. And positivity may be pleasure seeking, enjoy the moment, but at the same time, research shows it builds a long-term resources like physical, social, intellectual, and psychological. So when you're positive, you'll be very creative and you're open to information. So you will like to learn things. And positivity does more than feeling good in the present, also in the future. It has a contamination effect. So it's like this. When you keep a can, a good one, closer to a corroded one, what will happen to the new one? That also get corroded. It get contamination. Corrosion get contamination. The same way, when you have a positive person, the person next to him also become positive, and so on. So it has a contamination effect, and it goes on a spiral. So everyone will be positive. And same way, the negativity also has a contamination effect. So if you're positive, the group will be positive and the whole organization will be positive. And it may lead to your community to be positive. And you can see that the countries like UK, and they are bringing these couple of positive psychology professors and trying to make the whole entire country as a positive, and they will have a lot of workshops organized in this area. The positivity not only affect individuals, but as I told you, it can transform groups, teams, organization, and communities. So Eisen found it has an upward spiral of positivity, leads to caring, passion, leads to more positivity. Now let me show you a small video which is done by the University of Texas, Smile for Positivity, and this was carried out by few students. Just measure the positive action and the reaction. So let me just show you this video.
Excuse me. It's kind of hot today. Would you like to have a bottle of water? Thanks. Excuse me. You might not know it, but you've just been part of an experiment. For positive psychology, we're doing an experiment to see if a positive action elicits a positive facial response. And I was wondering if you had a couple minutes for a camera interview that may be on YouTube.
First of all, when you wake up in the evening and the day is shot, find yourself complaining about the things you ain't got. Never goes just the way that you want it to. Cliche of the day, c'est la vie, that's just life. It ain't easy. It's so tough. It ain't easy.
What you gonna do? Say what you gonna do?
Put a smile on your face. Make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do? Say what you gonna do?
Put a smile on your face. Make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do? Say what you gonna do?
And another thing, you could say that I'm a dreamer and you think it's uncool, preaching about the better life I learned in school. But you get what you give in this life that we live, and all that you do will come back to you. Life, it ain't easy. It's so tough. It ain't easy.
What you gonna do? Say what you gonna do?
Put a smile on your face. Make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
So what we're hoping to do today was judge whether a positive action elicited a positive response. If something as simple as giving somebody a bottle of water on a hot day made them smile. So what we're planning to do is to find participants who are walking maybe to class, and we're going to see if they will take a free bottle of water from us and judge their facial response on a scale from 1 to 5, and it starts with a scowl and ends with a big smile.
Life, it ain't easy. It's so tough. It ain't easy.
What you gonna do? Say what you gonna do?
Put a smile on your face. Make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do? Say what you gonna do?
Put a smile on your face. Make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do? Say what you gonna do?
Yo, when things isn't right, there's no need to fight. From you have life, then everything nicer. Love all your elders, please be polite. Even when you're hurting, don't forget to smile. Give love to all nation, big or small. When you do good, you'll get your reward. United we stand, divided we fall. Put a smile on your face and greet one and all.
Life, it ain't easy. Oh, it's so tough. It ain't easy.
What you gonna do? Say what you gonna do?
Put a smile on your face. Make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do? Say what you gonna do?
Put a smile on your face. Make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do? Say what you gonna do?
Put a smile on your face. Make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do? Say what you gonna do?
Put a smile on your face. Make the world a better place. Put a smile on your face.
What you gonna do? Say what you gonna do?
People love you when you smile and hate you when you screw. Lots of happiness, Rasta no.
I just got out of a long class, so I was happy. I was kind of down, so.
Needing some drink.
Exactly, there you go. I'm a little bit happier than I was just a minute ago.
We are wishing you. You could have come from Jamaica or Honolulu. Hey, keep a smile on your face and see the good that you do. When me say up a door, smile, and everything will be fine. You don't know all the vibes, kicking me inside.
Kind of unexpected, nice day out. I mean, person's gonna hand me some water, I'm gonna enjoy it. So it was a nice action, and still tastes pretty good. It's kind of okay. I've been stressing out a couple of classes that I have that have a lot of homework. So I was thinking about that, headed to class right now to take a quiz. So it did kind of help my day out just a little bit. Just that little extra boost and a little bit brighter day.
Kicking me inside. Love it when you smile. You look beautiful like that.
Did that bottle of water improve your mood?
No, it just made me smile because it wasn't candy or anything. I didn't want no candy. I thought she was gonna give me some candy.
Did it help that it was free?
Yes.
Kicking me inside. Love it when you smile. You look beautiful like that. Oh my God, from top. Your dimples are so cute. A lot of happiness in smile.
Now let's try to define what is positive organizational behavior. This is a study and application of positively oriented human resource strength and psychological capacities that can be measured, developed, and effectively managed for performance improvements in today's workplace. So this is a definition I have taken it from Fred Luthen's organizational behavior. The study and application of positively oriented human resource strength and psychological capacities that can be measured and developed. So as you know that the positivity start with by birth, but that doesn't end there. So it is developable. So it can be developed and it can be managed for performance improvements in today's workplace. And just imagine that if you had couple of keen car shoppers in your workplace, it could make a big difference. So we all have that capabilities of we all have the positive psychology that we have to develop and effectively managed. So this concept is based on theory and research. So various social psychologists has done research for last 20 years. It's a unique concept. It was not there in old organizational behavior books, textbooks. It's a new concept which is from last 20 years. It has valid measures. It is open to development. And it can be managed for performance improvement in workplace. So now let's look at what are the positive psychology states emerging to help in both the better understand the effective application of organizational behavior. So the positive organizational states are optimism, resilience, hope, and confidence. So these are the four things which we are going to study under positive organizational states. Also, we are going to look at other two states like emotional intelligence and psychological well-being, which is happiness. Also, because these two are we find very interesting, important for a success in the workplace. This positive psychology area has, as I told you, it has valid measures, open to development. It has a great performance impact in organization. And the four states of positive psychology is confidence, hope, optimism, and resilience. And this is an area which goes beyond social capital, which goes beyond the human capital. So this is developable. and can be used for competitive advantage. So organization can definitely get a competitive advantage if you develop the positive psychology of employees. And it's positively oriented, and in traditional organizational behaviors like emotions and things like that, it's beyond that. So now let's try to look at one by one in these traits. So as I told you, the first one we are going to study on optimism. So what is optimistic? So optimistic people always think when it comes to attribution of failure, so it is external, not their fault. It's unstable, temporary setback. It's specific, problem only in the situation. So they tend to put it's a temporary setback, problem only in the situation. So as when the situation changes, that will not be there. So that's what optimistic people think when it comes to failures. But the pessimistic people, on the other extreme, they think it's internal, it's their own fault, and it's stable, it will last long time, and it's global, it will happen every time. So optimism is one of the state of positive psychology. Now optimism as a human nature, we all by birth is optimistic. Now you have seen infants smiling, and they won't stay in the cot, they want to stand up, they want to walk. So that means they are optimistic. And then what will happen when they grow up? That smile disappears. Why? Because the world that we are living in is a little bit of a negative world. So our news is so negative. Now if every day morning, if you just get up in the morning and have a bed tea and watch CNN or BBC, it shows a lot of negative stuff. And then we become more negative. So the world we are living in negative, so that it has a contamination effects to our positivity. So we also get negative. So optimistic people are having more positivity. So optimism as an individual difference. People has a varying degree of optimism. Some are, if you plot in a continuum, on the one side is a pessimistic, other side is optimistic. So they have a varying points, So from pessimistic to optimism. So some of the organizations, they were using optimism for performance. One of the great companies in US, it's Metropolitan Life, MetLife. They were using optimism. Now you all know in Sri Lanka, also in the life insurance business, less than 1% of the Sri Lankans has got life insurance. But there are about 12 life insurance companies. So there are total about 24 insurance companies in Sri Lanka. In fact, I have studied little bit of this insurance industry for some other reason, especially bringing front end digitization to the insurance industry, and which we are working on a couple of projects. So therefore I studied this insurance industry. I realized about 26 insurance companies in Sri Lanka. Out of that, 12 is about life insurance, and another 13 is from general insurance. And there's one company in Sri Lankan insurance is having both life and general together. The rest of them, it's divided into life and separate companies. If you look at Selinco Life is a separate company, and Selinco General is another company. But you have seen that life insurance company, there are about 12 life insurance companies. They are all working on getting life insurance. But still, less than 1% of the Sri Lankans has life insurance. What has happened? Because if you really look at, if you study a little bit of these life insurance companies, they advertise, they talk about their assets. They said they have billions of assets. They can protect all of you all. But when it comes to marketing, they have life insurance agents, and they are interested in the big value customers, not majority of the customers. And they all talk about big about their assets, but they never go and do a research and find out what customers want it, what they are expecting from insurance. So insurance protect all of us. By saving a fraction of money, you can give a big protection. So that's the whole idea of insurance. But they never do a proper research to figure it out what the customers want it, what people want it. If they have done a work, then definitely it could have been more than 1% of the people will have life insurance. So if you look at the advertisement, they are always talking about how to increase their market share. So look at the two scenarios. One is you have a pizza and you are enjoying a pie in that pizza. But you could look at increasing your pie by advertising and various marketing campaigns, but the pizza remains same. So the entire market remains same, but individual companies are struggling to increase their market share. But if you look at if they can do a collaborative work to figure it out why this insurance market share is not growing, and if they can find out what sort of a package that we have to introduce to the people, and instead of fighting each other for a greater pie, you can think about increasing the size of the pizza from 1% to at least to the 5% of the population will have life insurance. So when you have a bigger pizza, you can have even if you are enjoying the same size of a pie, but it will be a much more better. So optimistic people will never try to look at how to increase your pie. They are looking at how to increase the pizza. So we all have a better life, So some of the companies that you have seen, that information technology which we are talking about, bring up make use of blue ocean strategies to come up with new business models. Think about Airbnb. So Airbnb, because of Airbnb, travel has increased. People can stay in many places. So they are more optimistic. Instead of putting up facilities like Hilton and Hyatt Regency, they were very optimistic. Every house has extra rooms. So why not we deploy those rooms for the people to travel and stay. So they have more rooms, but what they don't have is the properties. If you look at Hyatt Regency and Hilton put together, their market capitalization, it's smaller than the Airbnb market capitalization. Airbnb market capitalization goes up to $13 billion, whereas Hilton and Hyatt Regency put together is less than $13 billion. So the people who has properties, and the company Airbnb doesn't have properties, but they are very optimistic. They use the blue ocean strategies. So when it comes to management, the strategic management, you can use Michael Porter's 5 forces strategy or a blue ocean strategy. So optimistic organizations, they always look at the bigger picture, the horizon. So Metropolitan Life, also something like that, is a US company, and they created these short films to demystify insurance. But when MetLife created this animated film to demystify the insurance, all the life insurance companies will get benefited. But the pizza become bigger, so everyone will get benefited. So that's very important. I think it's very important all the insurance companies collaboratively do a study to find out why Sri Lankan life insurance market is not growing and how we can help the people by saving a fraction of money to get a good protection, because you all agree that risk never sleep. So there are two one is risk never sleep and the Inland Revenue Department never sleep. So now let me just show you these. So the MetLife, actually Metropolitan Life use optimism as a sales success. So they managed to create better sales by not increasing the pizza, the pie. They have made it much more bigger pizza so that everyone can have a better pizza, better pie. So let me just show you the MetLife, the demystifying short film.
So what is insurance? What does it do? Well, let me explain it to you. Down the road of life, ifs are everywhere. If the house, if the kids, if your back needs repair. From past experience, we can say one of those ifs will happen to someone today. By combining resources and helping people share the cost of life's risks, insurance can provide financial security in an uncertain world. It's a principle called risk pooling. It's the law of averages. Yes, it's true. We can predict how many, just not where and who. So we join together, the big and the small. All for one and one for all. Everybody into the pool. Everybody into the pool. Everybody into the pool. Everybody into the pool. You could be the exception or you could be the rule. Everyone's protected when we're all in the pool. You'd have to set aside a ton of money to prepare for life's risks on your own. But when you buy insurance, you get protection and peace of mind for a fraction of the cost. It's a place where no one loses, 'cause in the pool you'll find one will get the help he needs, the others get peace of mind. Everybody into the pool. Everybody into the pool. Everybody into the pool. Everybody into the pool. Safety in numbers is very cool. To prepare for those ifs, you gotta jump in the pool. Combining resources to prepare for life's uncertainties is a time-tested idea. The insurance benefits provided by your employer are an example of pooling. Insurance simply lets everyone jump in the pool. Marco, Polo. Just not cost-effective to go solo. Marco, Polo. Everybody into the pool. Yeah.
Okay, so we have studied optimism. So optimism is one of the traits of positive psychology. Now let's look at the hope and happiness. Now hope has agentic capacity, two parts. One is agentic capacity and the pathway thinking. Agentic capacity is the willpower or a goal-directed energy. The pathway thinking is a way power. So when there is no pathway to accomplish the goal, no subsequent hope, the goal will be accomplished. Now what you can see in this picture, if you want to reach to the top of this pillar, there are different pathways, multiple pathways. You can climb up. You can climb up with a ladder, or you can land it from a parachute. So there are multiple pathways to accomplish the goal. So depending on your energy, your capabilities, that's agentic capacity, you will select the right path to achieve the hope. So hope is a very powerful positive psychology component. Now you all are studying for your master's program. So when you're studying for your master's program, the hope is a very powerful thing. So you should have the willpower, and you will look at pathway thinking way power to reach the goal. So it's very important that you to go to the convocation on the right date. That all depends on your positivity, the hope. Now when I ask this question, a lot of students says, we all have a hope. Now what is the difference between this positive psychology we are talking about, this hope? When I ask this question, I always tell my students, think about a situation there where you are now studying for the lecture. Now let's say today afternoon that you have to go for a wedding in Matara. So one of your good friend is getting married, and you are going to be the best man or the bridesmaid for that friend. And then you are planning to go for that wedding after this lecture or the session. Now, if you are planning from Colombo, how do you plan to go to Matara? You probably think about going by highway. So within 1.5 hours or 2 hours, you can reach Matara. But just imagine there is a SMS coming to you now saying that the highway is going to be closed for 12 hours due to an accident. Then that pathway is out. Then how do we go? You might say still more time is there. We'll take the Gaul Road. So Gaul Road, yes, you can go on a Gaul Road. It will take a little longer time, but still you can go. You have time. But just imagine you get another SMS that the Gaul Road is closed because there is a blast in Kalutara Bridge. So bridge is fallen down, and now the vehicles are not moving. And then you think about, okay, you can go by the alternative paths, alternative roads, but you just put it a Google map and try to figure it out how long it will take it to go to Matara. But you realize that because the main road is closed, so that these by roads are got congested, so that Google Maps shows that even with 24 hours you will not be able to reach Matara. So that pathway is out. You might think I will go by the railway. You call the railway and the railway says they also suspended the train schedule because they were not sure that the railway track in that Kalutara area whether it is safe or not till they do these observations, till they do the study. They have stopped the railway for 12 hours. So that pathway is also gone. You might think, okay, I might ride a horse. Yes, if you have a energy, willpower, goal-directed energy, then you might ride a horse if you have the capability. But you might think about, okay, no, I don't have that energy. Yes, your friend is calling you saying that, you are the best man or the bridesmaid. You have to be there. And he's saying, you're very important. So you might think, one of the students, when I asked this question in the classroom, he said, we'll go by the, airline, helicopter or the plane to Mattala airport. Then I told that student, yes, that's a good idea. That's another pathway. But due to these road closures of both Gaul Road and the highway, so a lot of people has booked on helicopters and various VIPs for their travel, so that that those helicopters and the aircrafts are not available to go to Mattala. So that pathway is also out. And then some of the students says, okay, then we'll give it up. We will not go. But I told them, no, you are the bridesmaid or the bedesman. So you got to go. You have to think about. You have a hope. So you have to come up with agentic capacity and pathway thinking. So one of the students said, yes, I'll think this way. I'll go to Velavata area, to the beach, and just call a fisherman and ask him, what are you going to do in today's afternoon? And he said, I'm going for a fishing. And then let me ask the question from him, how much you are going to earn if you go for fishing on average? He said, my profit would be like 5,000 bucks. So you said, I'll give you 7,000 rupees. You come with me today to go to Matara. So you're not going to do fishing. So you can take a boat and go to Matara. So this is the power of the hope. So this is the positive psychology. You will know if you want to get things done, you will get it done. So your brain will work with multiple pathways, and then the hope will be achieved. So when I ask this question from young employees, when they come to office, so sometimes they find it very difficult to perform their job, especially in sales. They're not so aggressive. When I ask such questions from them, I'll ask them, how did you get married? How did you find your girlfriend? When you had a hope, how much effort that you have put it in? So why you are not putting these efforts when you are in workplace? So then they realize that they have more energy, they can do things. A lot of people start performing because they realize that the hope really runs, and that brings happiness. So now let's look at what is happiness. So happiness, or a subjective well-being, life satisfaction is one's life. Satisfaction with other important domains like job brings real happiness, and happiness will have positive effects. The pleasant emotion and moods always bring positive effects. So low level of negative effects like unpleasant moods also will be okay for positiveness. Now when it comes to happiness, they have done so much of research on this area of happiness, and they have found that people living in wealthier nations have a higher level of subjective well-being or happiness. And also the roles of goals. When you set up too low goals, or when you set up a too high goals, it will be detrimental to the subjective well-being or happiness. So it might bring, if it is too low, it will bring boredom. If it is too high, it brings anxiety. Now also when it comes to this happiness, there is another personality disposition called temperament personality disposition. Temperament and personality disposition. There is a small percentage of the people has a genetic predisposition to be happy or unhappy over a longer time. So you may find sometimes in your workplace There is a small percentage of people, they are happy whatever happens to them. Even if the bad events happen, they are still happy. And there is again a small percentage of people you may find whatever you try to make them happy, they are still unhappy. So this is a personality disposition. So this will last long for a person, but it will not be for rest of his life. It will only last for a longer run, this personality disposition. But that's a small percentage of the people in this world. But majority of the people not having this issue. So we discuss on this across cultures, happiness and the goals. So now let's look at this emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence is not a part of a positive psychology trait, but it's a very importantly connected into it. The role of emotions, emotional processing. It has personality effect, it has a mood effect. There are different types of emotions such as primary emotions. And then there are emotional categories and continuums, so which we are going to discuss now. Now when it comes to types of emotions, there are primary emotions, can be positive primary emotions and a negative primary emotions. The love, affection, happiness, joy, surprise, all are positive primary emotions. The fear, sadness, anger, disgust, shame are negative primary emotions. Now, every time, every moment we go through either positive or negative emotions. Now, what is emotional intelligence? Now, we need to look at the role of intelligence. It has a nature versus nurture intelligence. So nature means by birth we have some intelligence. Nurture means we learn intelligence. Now before we discuss on emotional intelligence, we'll look at on intelligence. So intelligence, as I told you, it's by birth and nurture. And we will recognize some of the multiple intelligences. And also we will look at intelligence as a cognitive mental ability. Now Gardner, one of the social psychologists, he has written books on this area. He identified multiple intelligences. So original intelligences were logical, mathematical intelligence. We all have that ability to process analytically, calculate and quantify that intelligence. So we can count it. We can train people to count it. Even long before the mathematics, the modern mathematics were there, still people use stones to count. Then verbal linguistic intelligence are there. You can put thoughts through words. And interpersonal intelligence, to understand others, process through interactions. Intrapersonal intelligence, so you would like to understand what are the emotions that you go through right at the moment. Visual spatial intelligence, you can put up mental models, you can think three-dimensionally, you can solve problems. So that's a visual spatial intelligence. So we all can see three-dimensionally. We can develop mental models. Musical intelligence, we have a sensitivity to pitch, melody and rhythm. So bodily kinetics intelligence, physical movements, jumping or dancing. I mean, you don't have to teach people to dance. When there is a rhythm, people will dance. So these original intelligences, we all have it. What are these new intelligences? Naturalist, need to be survive in the nature. So people have that natural ability to survive in the nature. existential intelligence. Now you know what is your personal mission, why you are there. And the emotional intelligence, emotional mature, you can recognize your own anger, react to emotions of yourself and others. So you can do that. So that's called emotional intelligence. So now we are going to look at little bit more on emotional intelligence. Before that, we will look at intelligence as a cognitive mental ability. So these cognitive abilities are related to job performance. People has the verbal comprehension. So all human beings can read and heard, understand the words, and you can teach them. Numerical intelligence. You can do arithmetic computation, spatial visualization, pursue spatial patterns. So sometimes even they are in different way distributed, you can connect them. Imagine how an object would look if position in space were changed. So you can mentally move an item from a place and get the new view. Perceptual speed, you can quickly identify visual similarities and difference. And you have a memory. You can retain and recall past incidents and experiences. And inductive reasoning, you can identify the logical sequence from specific to general. Now when you just look at when you are just stopped in a traffic, you do an induction. You think you are stopped because the vehicle in front of you has stopped. So why he has stopped? Because front of his vehicle is stopped. So when you do that induction, somebody in the front must have stopped. Why they in the mid noon, they have just stopped. There must be a reason, or the accident or a traffic light. So you had that ability to do that inductive reasoning. So we all have that. Now let's look at, after having studied emotions and intelligence, now let's look at what is emotional intelligence. So emotional intelligence in the workplace. The definition for the emotional intelligence is the capacity for recognizing your own feelings and those of others, for motivating ourselves and managing emotions well in ourselves and in our relationship. So you need to recognize your own feelings and those of others' feelings as well. So that can allow us to motivate ourselves and manage emotions and also build great relationship with others. So if you can't understand your own feelings, or if you can't understand the others' feelings, you will not be able to manage relationships. So this area has been studied by Goldsman, and he has written books on this emotional intelligence. And there are a lot of supporting evidences, and this has a great application to leaderships. Leaders should have a greater emotional intelligence to recognize their own emotions and understand others' emotions. Now you may have seen some of the political leaders that their failure is not having the emotional intelligence. When they talk, they lose people, they lose votes. If they, sometimes you said that if they talk more than 10 minutes, they start losing votes because they're seriously lacking emotional intelligence. Sometimes some politicians goes to beetle farmers, and in front of them you might say the beetle leaves is not the future, so this industry will go disappear in time to come, and the young people are having chewing gums. Now that statement, when you make the statement in front of a beetle leaf farmers, you can understand, you understand your own emotions, but you have to understand their emotions. What do they think? Now, but you may be talking about facts, but actually betel leaf will not disappear like that. It's not only using as a chewing gum. It's used for our cultural occasions, to worship elderly people, for New Year's, various other purposes. So when you're making statements, you got to understand your own emotions as well as others. Otherwise, you will not be able to manage the relationship. That doesn't mean that you don't have to be honest. You have to be honest. But always there is a place to tell the truth. You just because it is a truth, you cannot make that statement. There is always a right forum to make that statement. So these politicians sometime back may be talking like this, but over the years they may have improved their emotional intelligence, and there could be better politicians also time to come. So this emotional intelligence also is something that you can develop. So if you want to be a great leader, you have to develop this emotional intelligence. Not only for the leaders, all of you all need to have that emotional intelligence. So now let me just give you a small video clip on emotional intelligence at work.
Hi, thanks for stopping by my website. My name's Jason Roberts and I'm the Managing Director of Jason Roberts Business Consulting, a small training and facilitation company based in Newcastle, New South Wales. I'm guessing you've arrived here because you'd like to know a little more about what emotional intelligence is, how it can be measured, how it can be developed, and perhaps most importantly, how it affects your workplace performance. Firstly, let's start by defining what emotional intelligence is. Put simply, emotional intelligence defines how effectively a person perceives, understands, reasons with and manages their own emotions and the emotions of others in order to achieve workplace outcomes. Now think about someone who you know that's a real standout in your workplace. Now what makes them that way? Chances are that person you thought of possesses 3 key traits. 1. Technical expertise and knowledge. 2. Intellectual capacity. And the third ingredient is emotional intelligence, or as it's also known, EI or EQ. Of these 3, EI is perhaps the least recognised and yet the most powerful variable for boosting performance. For decades, a person's IQ has typically been used as the measure for workplace and life success. But IQ tells us nothing about a person's ability to understand and effectively manage relationships. After all, have you ever known someone who's technically brilliant and highly intelligent, but was seriously lacking in interpersonal skills? I'm sure you have. Let me ask you another question. What are the 3 greatest challenges that you face at work right now? Now, when I ask this question in workshops, the types of answers I typically receive relate to things such as time management, juggling competing demands, dealing with conflict and difficult people, and motivating ambivalent staff. Now, whether you realise it or not, all of these areas are directly related to emotional intelligence at work. Now, it's been said that whilst your IQ might get you the job, it's your EQ that's going to get you ahead. And the good news is that these emotional competencies can be developed to enhance both personal and professional outcomes.
So Nat, I think I'm going to just explain you, give you an example of a very good emotional intelligence statement. All you all know that in 1969, the US Neil Armstrong was the first man to set foot on the moon with his legendary words, "One small step for man, a giant leap for mankind." Giant leap for mankind. So, this statement, what is the emotional intelligence of this statement? Why we call it this emotionally intelligent statement? Now just watch this first moon landing. These legendary words in 1969.
It's interesting to compare the popularity of positive psychology in different cultures, and it's rather surprising to me. So I would say that Australia is the nation in which positive psychology has caught on the most. It's catching on in education. I'd say Great Britain is second, and the United States, I'd say, is about third. Although we're seeing interest in positive psychology from every continent and every major country. Books on positive psychology have been translated into more than 20 languages.
That was not the video that I want to play, but it just played. Let me just see the moon landing, a small clip. You may have seen this one.
Step off the limb. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. Columbia, this is Houston, ALS, over.
Houston, Columbia, on the high gain, over.
Roger, the EVA is progressing beautifully. They're setting up the flag now. I guess you're about the only person around that doesn't have TV coverage of the scene.
That's all right, I don't mind a bit.
They've got the flag up now, and you can see the stars and stripes on the lunar surface.
Are you getting a TV picture now, Houston?
Neil, yes, we are getting a TV picture. You're in our field of view now.
I'd like to evaluate the various paces that a person can traveling on the lunar surface. You do have to be. All right, you do have to be rather careful to keep track of where your center of mass is. Sometimes it takes about 2 or 3 paces to make sure that you've got your feet underneath you. And about 2 or 3 or maybe 4 easy paces can bring you to a fairly smooth stop. Like a football player, you just have to put out to the side, cut a little bit.
Now just let me ask you a question. What is this? Why do you think this is a emotional intelligence statement? One small step for man, a giant leap for mankind. Because when they send the man to the moon, and when they set the foot on the moon, has the mission is successful? Yes, it's halfway. The man has to return to the planet. So what do you need? You need the blessings of everyone in this planet. You may have technology. Now it's a great difficult thing to send a man to the moon. That's what we have never again tried, sending another man to a moon. The recent past, even our technology is very much developed. But one is a very expensive exercise. Second is a very risky exercise, sending a man to a moon. Anything can happen. So therefore, he has to still return back. So you need to see live the Neil Armstrong live. So you need the blessings of everyone. Now you know when Americans send the man to the moon, Russians is the first to send the man to a space, but not to the moon. So they all were watching this moment. So some of them are listening to from the radio. So when you make this statement, one small step for man, a giant leap for mankind, in that statement there is nothing on United States. So we being a mankind, we being a man, we all feel that this is a very great thing. We all give the blessings for Neil Armstrong to come back. So even if the mission goes fail, still entire world believe this is a good thing that we have tried out to send a man to a moon. So this is not the point where you start boasting yourself. This is a point where you need lot of blessings for him to come back. So that's what this is, a very emotional, intelligent statement. So in the workplace, you find people are technically brilliant, but these technically brilliant people may not climb up in the ladder. IQ will help you to get the job, but EI will help you to climb up in the organization. Now self-efficacy. Self-efficacy is confidence. The Wright brothers has orbited the world. They invented the aircraft. I mean, if you just want to see what looks like their initial aircrafts, let me see whether I have a small video. Let me play on that.
Wilbur and Orville Wright had already made history with the first controlled, powered flight at Kitty Hawk on December 17, 1903. Here, during one of their many later test flights, they found a way to gain initial acceleration by using a falling weight and pulley system, which they designed with the help of Charles Taylor. Within 60 years of Kitty Hawk, humans would orbit the Earth.
So what did Wright brothers had? They had confidence. What they didn't have? They didn't have pilot license. Pilot's license was issued later. So confidence is a very important thing. And that's a positive psychology thing. So confidence. How do you get confidence? There is a theoretical background and meanings of self-efficacy. So individual confidence about he saw her abilities to mobilize the motivation, cognitive resources, and courses of action needed to successfully execute a specific task within a given context. There's a specific versus general self-efficacy. So how self-efficacy differ from established organizational behavior concepts? We'll look at that. The process and impact of self-efficacy. So self-efficacy, what are the sources of self-efficacy? So how do you get confidence? So we will now look at what are the sources of self-efficacy in the next slide. And the implication of self-efficacy. When you are confident, it will help in the workplace. especially when you're in the selection panel, in an interview selection panel. Finally, you select the candidate based on your gut feeling. That's the confidence. And when it comes to applications like training and development, now you can send the employees for the best training program or a best development programs like the master's programs that you are doing it right now. But the success depends on the candidate's confidence. So if you are not confident, even if you are spent for a very expensive, very valuable training or a development program, you will not get anything. You come out empty because you are not confident. So that's what when we look at before we are doing the training programs, we do a pre-test. And then after the program we do a post-test. And we do a pre-test to figure it out where the candidates are, what level, So based on that information, we design the training program to make you more confident. So there are other applications that the self-efficacy is applicable. So now let's look at the sources of self-efficacy. Now, how do you get confidence? There are 4 ways where you can get confidence. When you have mastery experience, prior performance attainments, you get confidence. Now let's say, in your current organization, assign a job to you to organize an international level conference. But if you have done it previously, in previous organization, you'll be very confident because you had a mastery experience. Another way to get your confidence is from vicarious experience or modeling. So you're modeling other people, you get confidence. Now if you are a 7-footer, you can model, you can see the best basketball player also a 7-footer. So you can model the best basketball players, how we played. But you believe that if we can do it, I can do it, So you will also end up with a good player if you practice very well. So when I ask this question from students say, during their school days, they have modeled some senior students and they have been successful. You have seen young cricketers are modeling the senior cricketers and they play like same. Social persuasion is another source of self-efficacy. So if you get a good social persuasion, you'll be more confident. This is where, when your cricket team, when they are playing in your home grounds, you get a lot of social persuasion. You get drum beats, encouragement and all that. They'll perform better sometimes. So when you persuade your kids, they will be more confident. So social persuasion is a very important thing for people to get confidence. Then physiological and psychological arousal. Physiological means, when you are physically fit, that your confidence. It doesn't matter whether you are athletics or a general this thing. So if you look at, let's say, a person like Susantika, when she runs for 100 meters Olympics, just imagine if she was sick for a week before, had fever or something like that, So when they are not physically fit, he or she may not be very confident to run. So physical fitness is very essential even in the workplace, So that's what we say, sometimes to do exercises. So when you do more and more exercises, you'll be physically fit and that will bring you confidence. And that's what sometimes companies hire people who has done sports and they believe that they have a high level of confidence. And then another thing is psychological thing. So you may have seen sometimes a Sri Lankan cricket team goes for a matches and they lose matches because they had a lot of psychological factors where they are not very good terms with cricket board, or they have not in good terms with the cricket board, or when the times when the cricket board is not functioning properly, you may have seen that there are a lot of psychological effect on the players and the players don't play well and then they lose matches. So this confidence you're getting from these four sources, and in order to improve the confidence, if you are doing sales, let's say just imagine that you are in the auto sales position. For a young salesperson, we would say initially to sell 2 cars per month. So when they achieve 100%, selling 2 cars will increase that to 4 cars. So when they do sell 4 cars per month, we gradually increase the number. So they'll be more confident. But if you initially give them to sell 16 cars per month, if they achieve 1% of that, then they will not be confident. So you can increase the level of confidence for a salesperson by slowly increasing the target. Resilience is the 4th component of positive psychology. Optimism, hope, confidence, and resilience. So resilience is the ability to bounce back when you are hit with a significant adversity. Now think about a situation. Few years back we had a very bad situation called tsunami, and one of these hotel owner called Milton, who had a hotel in Mathur or Gaul, I can't remember, that the entire hotel has washed away with the tsunami and he lost his family. He may be in a tsunami camp, but he bounced back and he rebuilt the hotel, and now he's living happily. So that, we call him, he has a high resilience. But if you go to this Gaul area, you can still find some of these tsunami camps. The people are living in those camps after many years after the tsunami. And if you just interview them, you can realize that they have a low resilience, low ability to bounce back. So that means their positive psychology is very less. So in the beginning, the scientists thought this was selected few gifted children, this ability to bounce back. Not everyone will have it, but it is developable. So we can develop the resilience. I mean, a good examples that I can tell you that, Steve Jobs, and he has been fired by his own company, Apple. But when he rejoined Apple, he bounced back. He introduced new products such as iPod, Apple iPad, and then the iPhone. And those all products started giving good revenue to the Apple company, and he built a company from 2012 onwards, the most valuable company in the planet. And the company has a turnover about $250 billion with a profit of $56 billion. So Steve Jobs, now he passed away, but he had a high resilience to bounce back. And when the people hit adverse effect, some people has the ability to bounce back. Now even if you look at the life story of Steve Jobs, he has lost his biological parents and he was with relatives and he's grown up. So he had the ability to bounce back. And if you look at all the great characters in the world, if you have read the books about them, and they had a lot of life issues in the initial stage of their lives, but they had bounced back. And that shows that this is a positive psychology area or a state. Now when it comes to positive psychological capital, it's beyond the human and the social capital. With the rising recognition of human resources as a competitive advantage of today's global economy, human capital and more recently the social capital are being taught in both theory, research and practice. But you find that the positive psychological capital has been virtually ignored by both business, academics, and practitioners, which is a very, very vital capital. Now, let me show you a small slide. And we all have these four capital. We have this traditional economic capital. We might get it by birth or we might earn. So that tells you what you have, your finances, your house, your land, your vehicle, your properties, all that. These are all tangible assets. The plant, equipment, if you have organization, manufacturing company, the plant, equipment, you may have developed some of your own patents. So these brings economic capital. This tells you what you have. The human capital tells you what you know. Your experience, your education, your skill, knowledge, and ideas are the human capital. Now you all are doing master's program to develop this human capital. This tells you what you know. Now then the social capital is who you know, your relationships, networks of contacts, friends. Now if you have built up quite a lot of big network, you can get quite a lot of support from them. And whenever you have an issue, you can just call them and ask. They can give you a lot of advices to you. So that's social capital. And now these politicians use the social capital, and they spend quite a lot of time with people and attending weddings, funerals, and visiting their houses and finding problems in their areas and helping them out and building up social capital. Just imagine from the school days, if you have developed a lot of social capital, but you might not have time to develop the human capital, but you are with the village people and you develop a lot of relationships, and that will help you definitely when you have developed so much of relationship. The one of these major political parties will probably invite you to contest for the election, and then you may probably be able to book a seat in the parliament out of 225, because if you can get above 65,000 preferential votes in Colombo district, you probably can definitely enter into the parliament. So what you need is 65,000 people, the relationships, that they have to just give a preferential vote for you. Out of their 3 preferential votes, only 1 preferential votes only you require. But in certain other districts, you don't require that much of preferential votes to come to parliament. Now this social capital is very important, that your relationship, your contacts, your friends, who you know, which will help. Now these capitals are interchangeable. Now with the social capital, you can go to the parliament and then you can study about politics, you can study about democracy, you can study about various areas, and you can develop your human capital. And same way you have seen that some of the people with a lot of some of the politicians only with social capital, they are going to parliament. And you have seen the other way around, people with a lot of human capital, they develop a lot of social capital. The one of the person is, I can mention Professor Milinda Molagoda is one of the person who had some human capital. He came to the TV and various discussions, and with that human capital, he went to parliament because people voted for him, Colombo people, and he went to parliament. But he couldn't retain in the parliament for a longer period. So if you have to retain, you have to do a lot of work, But Professor G.L. Pires, initially entered to parliament with the national list during, I think, Chandrika Kumaratunga Bandaranaike's time, and then contested for the election with the social capital. Initially, he had the human capital only, so that when you have a human capital only, that you can't contest for election. That's what in Sri Lankan constitution we have this national list. Actually, it's the purpose of the national list was to bring this human capital into the parliament, but actually it is not happening. So those days it happens, and then after that they can develop the social capital, and then they can contest in the next following elections. Now, traditional economic capital, if you have a lot of good economic capital, you can develop the human capital. You can go and register for a course, and you can study, and you can develop the human capital. And same way, when you have the human capital, you can develop the economic capital. You can earn money, and you can develop the capital. So you can, let's say, with your human capital, if you are an inventor, that if you invented something and if you patented it, you can develop economic capital. And with the human capital, and with this traditional economic capital, you may have seen some politicians at the early stages, they give away that money to the society and develop the social capital and go to parliament. And these are all interchangeable, so all capitals are important. Now, today we discuss about the positive psychological capital. That's one of the great capital that tells you who you are. So the states of these capitals are confidence, hope, optimism, and resilience. So we discuss all these four: confidence, hope, optimism, and resilience. Now you can remember that the key people like King Kashyapa, great Parakrama Bahu, all of them had positive psychological capital. They have done great things. And with that positive psychological capital, and they have developed a lot of social capital. And if you look at the history, you can see after Parakram Bahu, the next generation didn't do much work, but they were talking about his father, and then they had the social capital. They also run the country for some time. The positive psychological capital is a great thing, and it goes beyond these other capitals. And lot more time, as you said, that we underestimate the positive psychological capital, and we have ignored both by the business and academics and practitioners, but which is a very, very vital capital. And you can see that all these capitals are interchangeable and can be used for your competitive advantage. And don't underestimate, sometimes I have seen that you might say, half of the politicians in the parliament, they have not done or gone through O levels, and you may see again that half of them are very educated, the lawyers and all of them are there in the parliament. But the social capital is something different from the human capital. So if you have social capital, what you need to do is you can go to the parliament and make use of the people who has the human capital and get their advisors and they develop the country. So I think these are all important. So wherein people has some capitals more than the other capitals, but finally what we require is the synergy. Put together all of them and develop your workplace or the country. So with this presentation, so I'm going to finish my lecture. So if you have any questions, you can mail me to my mail address. So thank you very much.